All right. Hey, welcome anybody and everybody who's listening right now. I already see we got a $5 donation from Blood Red already and a $50 donation from Elton, which is amazing. Thank you so much, guys. It is another episode of the Tigers Minor League Report. It's an interesting one so far, as Rogelio is driving back from parts unknown up north in Michigan. He may join us tonight. He may not. I'm not sure. Jerry was going to join us, but he had something come up at work, and we're supposed to be joined by Brian Sakowski, the national cross-checker from Perfect Game. We're going to talk a little draft tonight. Somebody who really knows the insides out of the draft, but he hasn't shown up yet. So right now it's just me and you guys. And as soon as I see that, I see a bunch of eyeballs leave, which shows us who's watching, who isn't. But yeah, first of all, happy Father's Day to anybody and everybody out there who is a father or got to spend time with their father or misses their father or any of that. We appreciate you spending some time with us. I hope everybody got a chance to be with their family today if they could. I will tell you from my side of things, we got to it was pretty nice. My dad's still with us. He's 72, 73, still going strong, and we got to meet for brunch this morning with him. And my brother has basically a starting hockey team in terms of his kids. He's got 6 kids. Only 3 of them made it, but with those 3 kids and his wife and me and 2 members of my family, we had to. It was an 11-person table. They had to put us in a conference room. It was like we were finishing a business deal instead of eating brunch, but it was still fun. It was good to be with everybody. And then, my family came back here to the house to swim a little bit. It's a beautiful day here in Michigan. So pretty good Father's Day, all things considered, I think. I hope everybody else had a good one too. Um, yeah, I don't know if it's going to be a solo show. We'll see. Hopefully we'll get the people to show up. But if not, we're going to talk. Oh, and there's Brian Sakowski joining us right now. Brian.
Hello.
Hello, Brian.
Thank you. Welcome, etc. Happy to be here.
Good. You hear me all right?
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, how'd you do? How you doing on Father's Day today?
Father's Day was all right. We were in Michigan hanging out with her Marissa's dad, so
Nice.
just busted ass back down the turnpike and walked in the house and ready to rock and roll here.
Yeah, appreciate you taking your time out. I know I had the Florida game, Florida taking care of business against Oral Roberts right behind me going down. Hurston Waldrop, man, I think people who knew that he was capable of this sort of stuff, but he's really probably pushing himself up. Wouldn't shock anybody, I think, if he's the number 2 pitcher on the
Yeah,
board now.
yeah, it's
Um,
him or Louder. And
yeah,
we'll see Dollander, soon again anyway. So it's those
yeah.
3. You're gonna be one of those 3.
Oh, Brian, watching your whole 1 hour mock draft for Perfect Game. Great content as always. Brian Sakowski. Yes, he is the national cross checker for Perfect Game. Of course, if you don't know, you see it there at Brian Sakowski PG. A couple underscores in there.
Couple of them.
Please follow him if you don't already. But I can't imagine anybody here who doesn't. But yeah, we typically run through the minor leagues when we do these shows, but I'm not going to put you through all that. We'll just get right to the draft when we start here. I imagine we're going to get some people peppering in questions from the
Sure.
chat. I'll try to work those in, but let's not overrun Brian with too many questions today, if you guys don't mind. So yeah, man, I really appreciate you joining us. Hopefully, Raj will hop on at some point, but he's somewhere between Oscoda and Dearborn. I don't know. But yeah, so like as I was saying, we got the College World Series going on right now, which is just one of the best events in all sports. Even people who don't really like baseball, it's still pretty awesome to see this kind of
Yep.
action up in Omaha. But and one cool thing about this year is like 2/3 of I don't know the top 15 players in the college ranks this year are there in Omaha, so we're getting to see a lot of them. And so yeah,
That's
it's been awfully fun so far.
that's the transfer portal in action, man. Like that's only going to
Yeah,
get more condensed as we go on. It's not going to happen 100% of the time, but we're at a place where like if you're really good at a mid major as a freshman, you're not going to be there anymore. And like it's
yeah,
kind of I look at that as bad. I'm a mid major guy, but like I'm team portal because I'm team in favor of an athlete like having control over their own career. But at the
yeah,
same time, it's like, man, that sucks and I'll just insert a school here. That sucks for Eastern Michigan, who
yeah,
identifies a guy no one else is on that they've evaluated, and they offer him a scholarship and they get him to campus and they sign that guy and they develop him, and bam, he has a great freshman year. And now he's with Kentucky. or
Yeah.
something. Like, it's a bummer. It really is.
Well, with the two names we mentioned, right? Waldrop and Dollander, weren't they both at Southern Miss?
Waldrop was at Southern Miss. Dollander was at South Georgia or Georgia Southern, whatever.
Ah,
Yeah,
the
Georgia Southern. Yeah,
schools with Southern in their name. I can't keep them correct.
yeah, yep.
But
Georgia
yeah,
Southern.
you come out and you blow up, and it's not rare for a freshman to blow up. Sometimes guys just grow into their bodies. It's the
Yep.
Verlander or whatever, like he was
Uh-huh.
88 as a high school senior, and he's 99 as a freshman. But yeah, that is a bummer. But then there's some really unique portal stories, like the kid I'm forgetting his name, the kid who was at Purdue, the lefty,
Joe Whitman.
and then hopped over to Kent State, which is not. I don't think that's really moving up in the world, but suddenly he just got put everything together and he's blown up this year. So it's good for guys like that. Yeah,
And now he might be a first rounder. Like Whitman might be a first rounder at this
yeah, I
point.
heard he's
Yeah,
he's doing pretty well out in the Cape, right? Which is
yeah.
another interesting wrinkle in the last couple of years, where you can go to the Cape before the draft.
He's already done on the Cape. Like I know his agent
Right.
pretty well. He threw once, was unbelievably good, and was like,
Yeah, exactly.
see you at the combine, fellas, or whatever it was. Like
He pulled the George Costanza.
absolutely.
Yeah, the combine I think comes up this week. I don't know. Is it in Arizona? I think
It's in Arizona.
Yeah,
It's at Chase Field. Yep.
yeah. I don't know if you would have any reason to go out there. There's probably all sorts of prep stuff happening too.
Yeah. I'll
we
be
did
at
have
Chase in 2 weeks anyways, or 3 weeks anyways, because that's where we're doing PG National this year. So
Oh, nice.
we'll be out there anyways.
Yeah, when somebody in our Discord was talking about they saw a bunch of kids playing at down at Roger Dean in Jupiter, and I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know what's going on. I underclassmen, I don't know what's happening, but there's always stuff going on down there.
There's plenty of upper class
Yeah.
going on right now. It's like it's only up here where high school just ended,
Oh,
like a
yeah.
lot of the rest of the country has been playing travel ball for 3 weeks already. So, oh,
It really doesn't ever stop, man. Like
no,
I don't when I was a kid, I don't remember travel baseball being much of a thing at all. But
it wasn't when I was a kid. You're not much older than me, but you're older than me. Like
I'm old enough.
we're working our way back. It's been the last 10 years that it's become what it is now.
One of my son's best friends. He's 9. Just went
Mhm.
down to Indiana for a baseball tournament this weekend. They played. They won a couple times. They had the finals today in Indiana. Lost to the best team in Indiana.
Sure.
But yeah, they're 9. And he's
Yeah.
playing up like they're 10-year-old, but still, it's kind of wild. But I don't know. Just sound like an old man, I guess, talking about stuff like that. It's
Me too.
you identifying these kids. They do it in Europe. They've been doing it in Europe for years, right? For the soccer players, like
Yeah.
they get these kids immediately when they're like, oh, he's got a future, and they do it because it's probably worth something to them. But
Yep.
in any event, I guess we can. You were on the what's the Days of Roar podcast with Mark and Evan the other day. That was great, and we always love having you on. And one thing I wanted to do, we have to touch on the top of the guys because the Tigers have the top of the class. Tigers have the 3rd pick. We got to touch on them, but
Of course.
you know so much, and your depth and breadth of knowledge is this. That one of the things I wanted to focus on after that was kind of it feels like a really deep infield class, and particularly with prep infielders. It reminds me a little bit of a couple of years ago, 21, I think it was,
Yeah.
without the high end of Marcelo Meyer and Jordan Lawler, but still like that class was super deep with guys like Carson Williams and Jackson Merrill and Max Muncy and Isaac Pacheco and all those dudes. And it reminds me of that a little bit. So we have no idea if the Tigers are going to take high schoolers
Mhm.
in that 2nd, 3rd pick, but I figured that seems to be like a strength of the class. So we'll dip into that a little bit after this. But since the Tigers have a top 3 pick, we got to discuss those top 3 guys, and we'll start tippy top, I guess, with Dylan Cruz. What do you think of him?
Hey man, I think he's really good. Like there we go. And signing off. Thanks for having me. Like yeah, but it's like it's so hard in any sport to go wire to wire in a cycle as the guy.
Yeah.
Everybody's got the guy for the next NFL draft. It's Caleb, whoever it is, Caleb Williams. Everyone's got the guy for the next NBA draft on the eve of the draft before it. We always have the year, 2 years out, whatever. It's really hard to go from that point to the draft the following year and just have one guy be the guy the whole time. The only other time it's happened in my career was Rutschman. So, and like that was a draft class that had Bobby Witt and Riley Green and so many other talented players like Corbin Carroll, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And Rutschman went wire to wire as number one. This is the dude. It didn't happen with Torque. It didn't happen with Mize. It didn't happen with any of the other guys in between. This year, though, it's been Dylan Cruz at the top of the 23 class since he said he was not going to be in the draft in like March of 2020.
Yeah.
So it's been over 3 years that this guy has been the guy. And when you're the guy, you are under the biggest microscope possible. We are looking for any reason at all to ding you. We're trying to find some reason to say that you're not as good as we thought you were 6 months ago or whatever. I'm still looking.
Yeah, that's it's funny. I remember going and looking because they said I think the first college home run for Dylan Cruz was off Paul Skeens.
Paul Skeens, yeah.
When he was with Air Force.
Yeah.
And you can see a comment right under that in the first video. And it's from Alex Bregman. And it says 1/1/2023. It's like, hey, that's fun all around. I mean, guys like you who are like in the business and you do this for a living don't typically like to make comps because you know that it's a foolish game or whatever, and there's lots of bad things. But you probably hear a lot of comps, and that's one of the strange things. I can't think of many comps for Dylan Cruz. I don't know why, but it's
haven't heard one.
It's a real that's I don't think it's going to scare anybody, but it's just like, who is this?
You got to start when you're talking about a guy that the top of the class. Like, let's start with what he can't do, because that list is going to be a lot shorter than what we think he can do. Right?
There you go.
What can't Dylan Cruz do? Probably not in like a 7 glove in center. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Probably won't hit 40 bombs a year.
Yeah.
End of list.
Well, yeah, I guess you would probably also not gonna steal you like 30 or 40
right.
bags.
Okay.
Whatever,
Yep. You're right. Yep. That's one I forgot. Probably not going to steal 30 plus bags. Probably not going to steal 20 plus bags. We can even go there.
But yeah, a little bit of everything else. Sticking at center, at least in pro ball, they're going to try him, right? He may end up in Org with a better defensive center fielder, but he can play it.
Yep.
They said the same thing about Riley Green, right? Like, he's going to have to move to a corner and like, just keep playing him.
I thought I'll comp to that too. Like, I thought Riley would have to move to a corner too. I said, in fairness, like down the road.
Yeah.
Like, but I still thought like he's been better than I even thought he was going to be, just defensively. But
so with him though was also the size, right? He was like 6'3", and you're like, oh, he's going to grow and get a big donkey of a dude and hit a bunch of home runs. But he's credit to him for staying in shape enough to play center field.
No doubt.
Yeah, so Cruz, it seems like there's basically 2 scenarios. Cruz goes 1, or the Pirates try to do something fun with money.
Right.
Right. I don't even really want to like speculate about it all because who the hell knows? But it feels like you said, he's wire to wire, been the guy forever. If you're the Pirates, just take the guy, right? It seems like and they have the bonus pools are so enormous now in the top overall pick. You don't have to give them. I mean, I'm sure the agent will push for as much as possible, but you can give them more than Torque. Give them more than whoever had the highest. And I think you can both be happy with that. You still have some money left over. We know the Pirates like to play around the money, but
Speaking of that, Henry Davis, big leaguer today, right? Speaking of
that's right.
money,
promoted. I was just Raj and I went up to Erie for their first home series, and they were playing at that time Altoona. Mm-hmm. Altoona was just chock full of. It was weird. There were like a bunch of 30-year-olds on the team. And the double, like Domingo Leyva was on that team. Former Tigers great.
It's a name for the past, yeah.
But yeah, so they had Henry Davis. They had him catch. He caught all of the night game, and the next day he caught 8 innings of a blowout day game. And I was like, wow, they're really working him hard trying to his catching, and his catching was okay.
Yeah,
he's just like what stands out. We're sitting right behind home plate, and he's just 1,000% muscle. His legs were like bursting out of his pants. I'm like, oh man. And so they've been playing him in the outfield a lot, and I think they just really want I'm sure they'll catch him a little bit, but they just want the bat, and I don't blame them because it's a pretty good bat. It's really patient, lots of power. I don't know if he's going to hit 280 or whatever, but I think he'll hit enough. So that's cool. First overall pick, making it up in 2 years.
Yeah,
2 years.
That's what you want, right?
Yep.
That's how it's kind of how it should go. You take a college guy first; he should be ready pretty quick.
Yeah, that's the hope.
Yeah.
But all right, so we can move on from Dylan Cruz. He's really good.
It's
We
really
confirm.
good.
We'll quote you on that. Now a lot of people got to see Paul Skeens pitch yesterday, which
Yes.
is when you watch him, you're like, oh boy, I really like. I wouldn't mind having that guy.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, he's just just sitting
Yeah.
99, like bump it up to 102.
He threw 46 pitches of 100 or more. Like he sat
I,
100. Like I the averages are he sat 99.6 or whatever. Like
yeah,
he sat 100 for a start. That's unbelievable.
yeah, no, it's absolutely insane. Like there are a handful of pitchers in the world, right? Like
Yep.
like it's Hunter Green and like maybe Otani and
Yeah.
Roki Sasaki and
That's it. There's the
Degrom,
three.
healthy Degrom maybe, but yeah, and I find myself getting greedy as watching him. Like, I'd really like to see him throw a slider here. Let's see that changeup, but then I go, oh no, just throw 100 and get out of this
Just
and win for
just
your team.
dot 101. Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the biggest things with him is it just seems so free and easy. Like
Mhm.
there's you see some guys throwing 100, like yeah, I get it because you're throwing your entire body into it, and this is just a big dude is under control and throwing. So I know it's one of those things like it seems like he's been attached to the Nats for a long time in this draft. Just he gets the Strasburg comps, and it's like
Yep.
the Nats probably need some pitching help. But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. We hear those rumors though that if he doesn't go in the top two, that the Tigers might pass on him anyway because I guess they don't. I mean, that's the knock on anybody, right? Is he's just a pitcher, like
He's a
no
pitcher.
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've seen what happened with like Strasburg, right? Greatest
Mhm.
pitching prospect of all time. Had a couple really high highs. You know, World Series MVP, I think he was, wasn't he?
Yep.
And still had a solid career, but a lot of injuries, and
Mhm.
who knows if he's ever coming back now. It doesn't sound good, which is a real bummer. I don't know. I don't think the Nats regret that pick,
No,
but
it's I saw this. I think Carlos Collazo was actually the one who put it on Twitter a couple days ago or something. Like someone commented, we were talking about Skeens and the risk and blah 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 blah, and someone said something like, "Well, the Nationals have to regret what they did, given that Strasburg didn't give them any longevity." And I'm pretty sure
that's
it was
insane.
Carlos who was like, well, I mean, I don't know, like 5 top 3 Cy Young Award years plus a Cy Young plus, a World Series
They,
plus. I'd imagine he like, that's pretty good, you know?
yeah, they they may regret the extension they gave him,
Sure,
but
but that's not what we're
you,
talking about.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's it. Overall, that's one of the better first overall picks of all time. Really, I
yes,
mean, people just
yes.
have these sky high expectations for who the first overall pick is going to be, or and a guy with that much hype. But yeah, I think you take if you're the Tigers and you said you're going to get exactly what Strasburg did for the Nats, you're going to get from Skeens. I think they go, okay,
Great,
sign us up.
great. Oh, we have an ace for, like, the
Yeah,
next 6 years? Dope. Yeah, okay,
yeah,
yeah.
but you get the feeling that Scott Harris and company they probably have basically just an aversion to taking any arm, and
Mhm.
it's like it's kind of like that Moneyball thing. Like, do we believe in this or not? Are we going to make a special exception for this guy because he looks so good, or are we just going to stick to this and not take a pitcher up top? I don't know. We'll see what happens, but it does feel like he's probably not going to the Tigers.
Right.
So that which brings us to Wyatt Langford,
Mhm.
who is I think kind of the guy that Tigers fans have been circling for most of the process because he's been that third guy for most of the process. But boy, he's pretty good too.
Yeah, he is. You could make the argument that he'll flash you tools that are louder than that of Cruz. Like he'll hit balls farther and run faster than Cruz in terms of sprint speed. Now, does that apply in any sort of like tangible production way? I don't know. Maybe. Like maybe Langford's a guy who's going to steal a few more bases than Cruz, but I think they have similar chances to play center. And
Yeah,
Langford's the one who's not playing center in pro ball right now, like or excuse me, in college ball. Cruz
yeah,
is. Cruz has played every day in center field for 3 years or whatever. Langford would need to make that switch.
yeah, and that's one of those things where it's you assume that he's going to get tried in pro ball at center
Mhm.
for a while. But it's maybe one of those things where like, hey, you know what? Eventually, we know he can play the corner. The
Yeah.
bat is coming along fine. Let's not go through the growing pains of playing center. It behooves the team to try, but you do have to wonder like, all right, why is he not playing center in
Mhm.
college? Florida has tons of talent. They've got is it Robertson I think this year, and before that was
Mhm.
Fabian. They're really good center fielders,
Yep.
but you'd think they'd try him. He's played a handful of games on center this year, but he's mostly sitting left and doing fine. But yeah, like the hit, the power, the speed, they're all pretty enticing there.
Yeah.
And now he's a guy that I kind of forced like a Randy Rosa trainer comp on him. I was like, okay, I could figure out a comp here, like just a really tooled up guy, who for whatever reason isn't playing in center.
Yeah.
But he'll go out there and hit you 20 plus bombs and maybe steal you 20 bases if he gets. That's the other thing. Like the speed's there, but he hasn't really been
No.
using it on the base paths, and I don't know if that's instincts or if it's Sully and the boys kind of
Sure.
just hold them back a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think the common refrain you hear, right, is that in a normal year, he might go 1-1. And
Yep.
it just so happens that there's two, players of the decade right ahead of him. So
You're right. You're right. It speaks to the class, like the top half of the class, or not even the top half, the top tier of the class. We're talking about multiple guys who, well, in a different year, we'd be 1-1. Like, okay, good. Like we're starting in a good spot. We're talking about the class at large. But I mean, I think like right now it's June 18th. I might feel differently in 3 weeks or whatever, depending on how the chatter goes and whatever. But I would be really surprised if it doesn't go cruise skeins right now. And then
yeah,
Tigers should have their pick of Langford or if they want to be weird.
yeah,
That
yeah,
should be what's gonna like that's the most likely outcome right now, anyways.
yeah. No, there's been a lot of discussion about them. The brass is on hand to watch Kyle Thiel a couple times, the catcher from Virginia, and he's a really good player, really good prospect. But it does feel like if they did that, boy, that's awfully risky. I mean, it's all whatever. Everything's risky, but they'd be doing that to really play some games with the money, which
Yes.
is always a bit of a gamble. Although, and maybe we can use this to roll into the next section. We can talk on Max Clark, Walker Jenkins, Kyle Thiel, all that stuff. But and people can hear that from you. You're going to get asked that 1,000 times before the draft starts, I think. So just look for Brian on other podcasts, and you'll hear it.
Max Clark is really good. So is Walker
Yeah.
Jenkins. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, they're both.
Yeah.
Not a normal draft, they might,
Yeah.
go top overall. But the Tigers also pick, I believe, 37th and 45th. And as I was mentioning earlier, this seems like a really strong class for kind of prep infielders.
Yes.
Maybe even college infielders too, to be honest. So I was just curious if I had written down a whole bunch of names that I thought might be there in that range. You never know with bonus pools and who's got what demands and whatever. But so I don't know if I'll throw out some names for you.
Sure.
And see if you can comment on them, and then at the end I'll let you mention some guys that you might want to. So we'll start with Colt Emerson out of Ohio. What can you tell us about him?
Not going to be there.
Fair enough. Gotcha.
I say that I love Colt Emerson, man.
Cover my bases.
Yeah, I wish he was. I hope if they get weird at 3, then that's the guy they float. Like, I think he can really hit. It's a good left-handed swing. He uses the whole field. Saw him start to come into some power last summer with Wood, which was one of the things we were wanting to see, obviously. Maybe not a shortstop, more of like a smooth mover than he is like twitchy, lateral agility like that. I think maybe third or second is more likely, but really like the left-handed bat, he's hit along every stop of the way. He's a Team USA guy. Like he's played on all these high-profile things and hit when he's done so. So if he were a grade more athletic, we'd have to be talking about him in the top 10, top 15 picks. But because of, maybe he's not a shortstop, then a little bit down the board, but really confident in the hit tool there.
Yeah, and teams take hitters.
Teams take
pretty
hitters
quickly. So
yep.
Like some of these names are, like you said, they're probably not going to be there. I know George Lombard Jr. has been climbing up boards.
Yep.
Now the Tigers have an in there, possibly.
They do.
But what can you tell us about him?
That's a name I would keep in the back of your mind at 37 or 45. Like just literally would. It makes a lot of sense given the connections. And George Lombard Jr. is also a pretty good controller of the strike zone. So it makes sense in terms of profile too. And, that's the range too for him too in that range. So he had one of the best 3-day playoff stretches at the WWBA I've ever seen last summer. And I know that doesn't make a player, but he was 11 for 12 across 3 games with 4 doubles, 3 triples, 3 bombs, and 4 walks. And it was a little bit of a smaller park. Some of the pitching he saw in those games weren't fantastic. There's a lot of mitigating factors there, but to watch a dude have a heater like that for 3 days it's tough to get out of your head. And so I think athlete up the middle somewhere, good chance at short, with good field to hit, and it's the power's not quite there yet, but I think he's got the body for it. I think it'll come. He's got a younger brother who's really good too, who's bigger
That's what I
than he
heard.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2026 kid. So like, and obviously, like you look at dad, gonna have some power in that frame
Hmm.
at some point or another. So I would watch that one closely at one of their next two picks.
Yeah, that's exciting for Tigers fans. Just kind of hope that they say like, yeah, we're not signing anywhere but Detroit. But
Right, right.
who knows? Let's see who else we got. We got. Let's go with Rock. I assume it's
Rock,
Rock.
yeah,
Rock
Rock
Chalowski.
Chalowski, yeah.
Yeah.
Son of a scout. His dad's an area guy out in the Four Corners. Has the like you'd say son of a coach normally, but he kind of has that like advanced feel for the game that like son of a
Gotcha.
coach would have. So son of a scout, it's the same thing for me. But yeah, really good defender, like a high level defender. There's not a lot of juice there yet. He's kind of still long and lanky in terms of his build. I wouldn't call him skinny, but lanky still. But yeah, it's talented up the middle. I think he's a shortstop for sure, long term. It's solid hit tool right now, but it's more of a like you're kind of projecting on the bat a little further out than you would with some guys, just because you're not really seeing the impact yet.
Hmm.
But he's got the frame to come into some more strength. He's got the swing path that would tell me that he's going to be able to drive some balls out eventually. But right now, it's very much like singles over the infielders' heads which is not bad. I'm not
Yeah.
criticizing that, but once we start seeing him backspin some balls out and this, that, and the other thing, then we can be more confident on the power. But yeah, man, I don't know if he's going to sign. I think that one's going to be a pretty tough sign, but either way, like talented glove, infielder with some pedigree, think it would be a good pick in that range.
I'm looking to see where he's committed to UCLA.
UCLA,
Yeah.
yep,
Sometimes they get their guys.
yep.
Sometimes they get their guys.
Sometimes.
Um, let's see. Well, so here's a kid that you've seen him in a couple of mocks to Detroit just because of the range. Walker Martin out of Colorado
Hmm.
was a bigger hitter, I would think, or at least
Yeah,
taller. Yeah.
tall. Yeah, he's a big
Yeah.
dude. He's also a really freaky athlete. He's like one of maybe the highest testing load and sports athlete for a player of his build.
Hmm.
When they do their testing, they break you down by build. So like
Gotcha.
large, skinny, large, whatever it is. There's a lot of different categories. So for he's like off the charts in terms of his athletic ability. He's old for the class, so we'll find out if that matters to Harris or not. I don't know if it will, but he's
Hmm.
notably old for the class. But it's huge left-handed power with athleticism, and he's a big dude. Um, maybe he's big enough to where or maybe he's athletic enough to where his size will still allow him to play short. Think it's probably a third baseman either way, but left-handed hitting third baseman with power, man, like, you know, it's I'm trying to compare to recent Tigers drafts. Like that's the Pacheco profile, right?
Gotcha.
Martin's a better athlete with more production, more now
Yeah.
production. Yeah.
Yeah, it's enticing. He was a guy who kind of, I don't know if he popped up this year, but he's definitely been like a riser. It seems like.
Last summer was his kind of like, oh, what do we got here? Like once the testing started coming out with him, like once teams started to realize that even with the on-field tools, there's this underlying stuff going on with him that works in his favor. And then he hit like 22 bombs this year in high school baseball or something ridiculous like that. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's been a steady rise for him over the last year or so.
he went out and had a Kristen Stewart high school.
Super
Um,
casual. Yeah.
yeah, um, and then another guy that's I think has been rising a little bit, but maybe I'm mistaken. Is Sammy Stafura
Mhm.
is he from New York? I
Yep.
think that usually that's not shocking. Usually, there's a guy from the north who kind of pops up
Right.
senior
And there's
year.
a bunch of arms up there too that are
Yeah,
popping up or have popped up now that it's
Nath kid or
June.
whatever.
Yeah, Nath
Yeah.
and Echeverria. Um, but Hero Wyatt in Connecticut. But anyway, Sammy, I big fan of Sammy too. He's such an easy mover, man. Like one of those dudes you just watch him take infield and you're like, okay, like this is an athlete who belongs on this field here. He was a guy who really blew up in Jupiter.
Hmm.
Had a solid but not like standout summer leading up to that. Was in Jupiter with the I don't even remember the combo team who won, the teams that joined together, and was playing short. I think he played a little second base. Him and AJ Ewing were up the middle on the same team. But yeah, man, like really like the athleticism, really like the hands, like the way the feet work, has the arm strength to play short. I like the swing better than other guys do. There's some who say it's not that great of a swing. I think it's awesome. Power is there. It's more of a power over hit right now, which is not necessarily a bad thing because I think there's hit there too. It's just
Mhm.
this spring he put more of an emphasis on driving balls out to try and get more attention, I think. But yeah, man, he's really good too. You're talking. You're gonna hear me say he's really good. This is a very strong
Yeah.
prep infield class. Like I've said this on a bunch of different podcasts. It's like the strength of this class is the top tier, and then it's prep bats. You know,
Yeah, and so like I'm using you as a terrific resource for this because you're one of the best there is. But it's like the Tigers might go out and take 3 college bats.
we don't
They
know.
might go
Yeah.
they might go take two prep pitchers afterward. I don't know. I just figured it was the strength of the class, so I
Yep.
know
Yep.
hit you with it. There was another kind of a mover upwards early in the season. He's a Florida kid that we talked about back in the day, like 3 months ago, in Adrian Santana. I haven't
Mhm.
really kept up with to see if he
Yep.
stayed on that plane or what's
Yeah.
going on with him.
Yeah, still kind of the exact opposite of Walker Martin. He's super young for the grade. He's smaller, kind of a slender kid. Really good athlete who is unquestionably a shortstop. Probably the best infield glove in the prep class, I would say. Really good shortstop, really good hands, really good short area quickness. The arm is plus. It was a light stick last summer.
Hmm.
It was a light stick. It was not that he struggled to make contact. It was that he struggled to make impactful contact. It wasn't an overwhelming amount of swing and miss or anything like that. It was just a lot of choppers,
Hmm.
And so this spring, and he does play at a little bit of a smaller high school field, so the home run numbers were a little bit inflated. But even
Gotcha.
aside from that, was getting the ball in the air more, was doing so with backspin, was kind of getting the barrel out in a way we hadn't seen before. Was driving balls pull side, was putting balls up the opposite field gap. So even if you say, "Oh, well, he hit 9 home runs," it really would have been 7. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Like the results were different, and that's kind of what
Hmm.
we were looking for, anyways. So I would imagine that his pre-draft workouts with teams where they're going to get him on TrackMan and see what the exit data really looks like right now, like that's what's going to determine where he goes. But it may be as high as 20, and then
Hmm.
it could be into this range that we're talking about with the Tigers. He's kind of all over the board, but his age really like he's
Yeah,
he's going to be 17 and for a while after the draft. So like that, you know, shoot that guy up probably.
feels like a classic Cleveland pick from the
Sure
last couple of
does.
years. Yeah,
Sure does.
he's a switch hitter too, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
like the versatility there. I get a couple more here. Cooper Pratt from
Mhm.
Mississippi, I believe, and then Eric Batanti from California.
I think you can wipe Pratt off the board, man. I've heard he is going to school.
Ah,
Um,
gotcha.
I don't think he's pulled his name out or anything like that, but like, dude from Oxford, Mississippi, like he's going to play at Ole Miss.
Yeah,
We can write that one down. Um, Gray Kessinger, Thomas Dillard of old high school guys
gotcha.
who had some hype, but they went to Oxford High School, so they were going to school, man. Um, yeah, I like Pratt a lot. He's kind of like been put out of my mind a little bit just because of
Basically, yeah.
like he's going to go to school, but Batanti, another one, an interesting one. He's a very polarizing one. He's one that nobody seems to have a real strong like I'm right opinion about on that guy. It's been inconsistent. It's been up and down. When it flashes, it's a gorgeous Adonis looking, young for the grade, left-handed hitting third baseman who is an athlete with arm strength and monster juice.
Mhm.
That goes away for long stretches though. So, it's kind of your typical hit or miss young raw high school guy, but like it's left-handed hitting third baseman with athleticism and power, and he's young and he's big and like so many things you want to love there. But for me, just me personally, like I if I were turning in a report to the team, I'd be like, I need to see this guy go to college or something like that.
Yeah, I think I was watching just a couple weeks ago. I was watching the All American game, and I thought he played pretty well in that, which is always
Mhm.
leaves an impression. But then, yeah, like the scouts are actually out there watching him at every event instead of just the one on TV.
He's
Um,
uber talented, man. Like, there's no denying that. There's so many boxes that are just like, oh, check, check, check,
mhm,
check, check. And it's like it's really only if you watch him for extended periods of time where you're like, okay, well, this is maybe a little bit rawer than I thought it was, or something like that. But that's not to
yeah.
say he won't be an all star. I'm less sure on that one, is all.
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean that was like kind of the handful of guys I had
Mhm.
picked out for you, but I don't know if there's anybody that I failed to mention. Anybody you think is worth mentioning out of
Uh,
this kind of phylum of draft prospects?
Let me pull up the old board here, see what we
There
got
you
as
go.
far as guys who
There's that
might be in that
Zanatello
range.
kid with this like the more Z's in his
Azan.
name than yeah.
Eh. He's a third baseman, I think, or maybe a center fielder. Really good athlete. Had a big spring. Did a lot of the things we were waiting for him to see, or we were waiting to see from him. Excuse me, this spring, in terms of the power and the consistency at bat to at bat, in terms of making hard contact. So he's flying up in a big way. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in that range right around where the Tigers are. Miles Naylor's another one maybe to talk about. Canadian kid, obviously the brother of Josh and Bo. Very different player from the other two. This guy's a shortstop. He's a right-handed hitting shortstop. So he's, excuse me, shockingly different than his brothers, but it's similar, like massive juice. I was up in Ontario about a month ago to watch a bunch of those guys play, and he hit a ball, one of the furthest home runs I've ever seen any amateur hit, like inclusive of college, just 480 feet, like onto a berm or something ridiculous. I've seen him enough to be confident in the fact that I think he's going to hit. I don't know how much. Probably third base for me because it's a 7 arm when he lets it rip too.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, you could put that one in there too. I think he's all over the place in terms of his range. He's another one of those guys where the private workouts have gone extremely well. Like the exit data is off the charts, so he's kind of behind the scenes a little bit, climbing up.
Nice.
But yeah, just wanted to throw that name in there too.
That's a good one because I haven't really paid much attention. Now we went and saw Denzel Clark a bunch last year, who I think is a Naylor cousin.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
like, oh man, look at this dude.
The Ontario Blue Jays stick together, man. Like, yeah, it's
yeah. So that's good athletes. No, I appreciate it. We there's 1,000 players we can mention, but one thing I did want to let you do because I know how much you love JUCO guys.
Hell yeah!
Is give me some of your favorite JUCO players in this draft, and then I'll let you go.
Christian Apor, we gotta talk about him.
That name sounds familiar to me.
He's draft and follow guy last year from Oakland, who is now too good to sign for what the draft and follow would let him sign for. So he's gonna, I would imagine, go back into the draft and be eligible again this year. Went to Gulf Coast State. He's a freshman. It is very, very raw, but he's still just 18. Like he's young. He was a year young for the grade out of high school. It's like up to 98, left-handed, super, super easy. If you remember Antoine Kelly from Wabash a couple years ago, who was a second rounder, Brewers, I think, took him.
Yep.
Big, tall lefty, JUCO arm.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar. It's different operationally. It doesn't look the same, but it's similar in terms of like JUCO dude does it super easy, huge fastball, like very crude. So it's a big arm. I'd love to get into the Tigers system. I really would, but I don't know how much they're going to pay for that amount of rawness and that amount of limited strike throwing at times too. So, but got to mention him. You got to mention Sam Antonacci. He's a shortstop from Heartland. Antonacci, that's right.
Wait, Heartland, where is that?
Illinois.
All right, gotcha, sir.
Yep, Heartland in Illinois. Not Heartland, Michigan.
Fair enough. Good.
D1 softball state champions I saw. Shouts out to Heartland. But yeah, it's who are we talking about? I think I just lost it talking about Heartland.
Antonacci.
Oh, Antonacci, excuse me. Yeah, he's probably the best JUCO bat in this class, and JUCO bats are historically very, very tough to evaluate because you can evaluate a JUCO pitcher on his data, and it's really hard to evaluate a JUCO hitter on his data because he may see one good pitcher all year. But he's doing well. I think he's on the Cape, and I think he's playing well there. It's maybe not a shortstop, but really, really excellent hitting tools. He runs, he steals bases. He's, it could be a guy committed to Coastal Carolina. If he goes there and blows up, then he'll be a second rounder next year or whatever. But yeah, I mean, those two, it's not a huge year for JC. The portal has kind of killed the first rounder JUCO guy, I think, for the time being anyways. I think the portal's kind of killed that. You won't see Jackson Rutledge happen in the age of the portal.
Just saw him pitching against Erie yesterday.
How's he look?
2 days ago. Colt Keith took him deep. So
hell yeah.
But other than that, he was all right.
Still huge.
Yeah. So yeah, Brian, I appreciate it. There were a couple questions in chat. I've been kind of pushing them off to the side, but I'll get them now if you don't mind.
No,
not a ton, but it was like Dan wanted to know if Langford is a better hitter than Kyle Teal.
Is Wyatt Langford a better hitter than Kyle Teal? I would say that Kyle Teal has a slightly better hit tool, but I would say that Wyatt Langford is significantly more overall offensively impactful. That's my answer.
There you go. Higher OPS, more power, basically.
Yes.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
And he's a bigger, more muscular dude. I think
Yeah.
Teal's kind of more like lithe and athletic. I'm trying to see if there was any. I think that might have actually been it in the chat. I'm looking.
Shouts out to
Lots,
Dan.
lots,
Yep.
yeah, lots of comments. Please ask Brian to compare Langford and Teal as hitters. Oh, he just did it. I
Yeah.
just did it. Let's see
Teal's
where.
left-handed, gap to gap, high contact guy, knows the zone. Langford is not a free swinger or anything, but like will swing and miss a little bit more than Teal. But Langford hits the ball way further and way harder more often.
So we got a question from Connor. He said, "Where are Purify and Service going in the draft?"
I don't think either. I just off the top of my head, like I think that both are going to go to school. Jaron had a great spring. Well, they both had great springs, first of all, but Jaron kind of answered some questions that we had, like young kid, athlete, plays shortstop, really good defender, hit tool, blah, 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 blah. Need to see him get better, need bigger, need to see him get stronger, need to see him hit more balls out. Did those things. Had a good spring. I think he hit 8 or 9 bombs this spring. Was hitting balls harder than I've ever seen him hit before, which is what you're supposed to do. And I think he's probably going to end up in school. I don't know if anybody has him in a high enough range for him to want to sign in that range. And Service too. Like he's going to go to Texas. Like I don't know if Service. They've both been turned in. I just don't know if anybody's turned them in high enough to where it would make sense for them to not go to Clemson or Texas. That's all. But Service first. I was there for his first at bat of the year. He hit a ball 400 feet to the parking lot at St. Mary's on the very first pitch. On the very first pitch he saw of the season. And he had a good year too, man. Like has made real improvements behind the plate. He's always been a good athlete, but now he's kind of channeling that athleticism better behind the plate now that he's gotten more confident back there and had more reps and throws well. And that power showed up in a big way this spring. I think he's got to get better at hitting breaking balls, but so does every high school player. But I love them both. I think they're both really good.
Yeah, and for people who don't know what we're talking about here, it's Jaron Purifies from what Liggett, I think.
They're both Liggett guys. Yep.
Oh, okay, both Liggett. Yep. Yeah, which you're the upsets in Michigan high school Michigan baseball, right?
So many.
Yeah,
they broke the streak. They broke the St. Mary's streak, ended it, and then did not have a great regular season because they play in that Catholic League. So, unless you're world beaters, you're going to lose a bunch of regular season games, and they did. But then they marched all the way through the state playoffs to get to the state championship game in Division II, and Grand Rapids Christian beat them 2-1 yesterday. But it was still a good season for Liggett, like however you want to slice it.
Yeah, I mean, sure, it's tough for the kids. For anybody in a team sport, it's you get that far, you get that close, and God, those poor kids on Texas. Oh God, the game against Stanford. Oh God.
Or Arkansas a couple years ago.
Against Oregon State. My goodness.
Yep.
Yes, that was. That was underclassman Rushman, I think, wasn't it?
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, because they who they had? They had the Abel kid. It was.
Yep, Kevin
yeah,
Abel.
It was.
They also had Luke Heimlich.
Oh, that's right. Oh no. Oh no.
Sorry, everyone. Yeah.
Is he off in Japan minor leagues with Trevor Bauer? No, I don't know what happened with Luke Heimlich.
There's a funny story. I won't name the org because you could draw the line, but
it's the Royals.
No, this is different story. Different story. But there was an org whose area scout, like as the tweet came out about the Heimlich situation, like as the news broke for the first time, this organization's area scout was literally in the middle of presenting the player to the draft room, like as they were doing their draft meetings, and had like a huge makeup grade on him. Like,
oh no,
elite kid, like hard worker, makes his teammates better, everything, this, that, and the other thing under the sun. Sits down, and two of the other area guys who were sitting next to him just kind of leaned over and showed him the tweet, and he was just like, "Oh no!" Like
head and hands. Well,
but he didn't get in trouble or anything. Still gainfully employed as a scout. So like, I'm not going to say who it was, obviously, but yeah, that's a tough way to find out. Yeah,
you can do your makeup digs and everything, and you get nothing but good comments, but you never know. Like God, we're going completely off the rails here. But I was just.
How would you know? Yeah,
I don't know. I was watching at my buddy's house. We were watching the documentary on Jared from Subway, and it's like, oh no, like imagine being a company and making this dude the face of your company, and then you find out that he's got this underground. Anyway,
yeah,
I'm going off the rails. Brian, you give us plenty of time. I appreciate you coming on here. give some people, heads up on what's coming for PG. What do you guys got coming up?
A lot of stuff coming, obviously, as we rush down the track here towards the draft. We always rank however many players there are that will be drafted. That's kind of our thing. So, however many picks in the draft there are, that's how many players we rank for it. And then we write reports on every single one of those players for the draft. So, you
Sheesh.
will have 600 plus, 616 it was one year. I don't know what it is this year, whatever. You'll have that many draft reports to read from us, myself, as well as the rest of the draft team at PG. We'll have a couple mocks on the way. One, at least two, like one soon and then one the day of, obviously. Plenty of stuff. We're rolling in a big way for 2024 and beyond right now. We have a guy who's on Cape Cod. He's blowing up Twitter, tweeting about 2023s and 2024s from Cape Cod because MLB has screwed up the draft timing so badly that we have to scout both. So, you know,
Well, in
that's
the
what
first
we're
year,
trying to scout. Two classes is what we're doing.
yeah,
But
that's fun. Well, no, like a couple of years ago, we were trying to watch the futures game with Pork and Green while watching the draft. It doesn't seem right.
yeah,
This
yeah,
seems you're not doing this right. Just celebrating
no,
your young players.
this is wrong.
Uh,
Yeah.
but at least they've got changed that to where
Yes.
how many rounds will Brian project? Well, they're 20 rounds,
20.
so that's. I was just looking to see what the I don't know. I don't see the order past like the third or fourth round once the top picks get out there. But yeah, you're looking at a lot of picks this year. And it's
600 and
like I
something.
said, if you're interested in the draft and somehow aren't following Brian, you really should because he's tweeting out information lightning quick about every single player who gets drafted. At least in the first few rounds, I think you. I don't know if you try to get them all in the late
Then
rounds
my
too, but
fingers get tired. Yeah,
yeah,
it's rest
but
rest assured that this is my solemn oath when it comes to the draft coverage. I got something on most everyone, even if it's not a
yeah,
full eval. I got something on most everyone. We don't get. It's usually like the sixth or seventh round until someone pops up I've never heard of, and it's a college senior I wouldn't have known about
yeah,
anyways or
from
whatever. But
always from
uh,
a College of Arts and Sciences or something like
yeah, like Oklahoma Arts and Sciences Coliseum University. I don't know,
that.
like
Well,
and he was hurt though. Some scout saw a bullpen and we decided to take him in the seventh round. Okay, well, how would I have known about that?
yeah,
But
no, it's the Wilmer Flores. Had he been drafted, had that draft been longer, somebody would have taken Wilmer
yeah,
Flores. And it's like, what
yep,
Wilmer? All right.
yep.
Who was it? It was Evan Carter was kind of a shock, but I'm sure you had stuff on him. But it was like we didn't picture him in the first round.
That was number one. That was like the
Really?
first ever or since my very early days. Like that was like the first time in this current stretch of draft process where it was like an early pick, and I was like, who?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Who?
like that's the closest you're gonna get to like a Tone Ash scenario. Like, what
Yes,
you found this guy in the sugarcane fields? What?
dude. And it's only because of COVID. That's the only reason. Because guys who were hideouts never were found. If
Yeah,
you could hide guys out if you saw them early, because early was the only time we had to scout in the spring. So
yeah,
like it was if you had a guy that nobody else knew about on March 1st, that you had a guy that nobody else knew about on
yeah,
July 1st most of the time. And that's the only time it'll ever happen unless we have another pandemic. But
yeah. Well, we're gonna hold out hope
fingers
that that doesn't happen.
fingers
Uh,
crossed.
Andrew Miller said, "What's the website?" Just
Oh, it's
perfect game.
perfectgame.org. www.perfectgame.org. That's click on the draft tab and you'll find all of our stuff there.
All right, Brian. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good evening. Once again, Brian Sakowski for Perfect Game, National Cross Checker, all your draft needs. I think we're going to try to get you on around the draft time too, but I know you're super busy and it just depends. So, well, thanks, man, and have a good rest of your evening.
Appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you,
All right.
buddy.
Yep. See ya.
See ya.
All right. So now it's still just me. The draft talk's gone away. It's not going to be quite as fun, but great to have Brian on. Like I said, he's got a breadth of knowledge that not many can match, and it's helps with the draft. And just our luck, the Tigers probably won't draft anybody we talked about there. But if they do, you can always come back to this and look and say, hey, that's what to think about. But so now we're gonna switch gears, try to get through the week that was in the Tigers minor league system. I know there's some earlier questions about that too that I'll try to go back and get. But I'm also going to try to do this thing. So Raj, he normally runs the whole show because he has all the setup, he has all the drops, he has all the various video accoutrements, and I'm trying to get the slides here that he puts together, right? The little slides for each show. So what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try to share my screen. Um, Sorry, yeah, just bear with me, guys, because I'm not sure what I'm doing. Let's see, settings, visual. No, that's not what I want. But well, you know what? You guys could just imagine it, I suppose, while I'm talking about this, if you want. We'll start up in Toledo with the Mud Hens, who actually went 4-2 this week against Lehigh Valley. It was their first series win since mid-April when they beat Columbus. I think 5-1. They've been on a really rough stretch, bad luck, if you will, and and one of the things we talked about and what we noticed since the beginning of the year is basically the team has gone as Parker Meadows and Justin Henry Malloy have gone. And wouldn't you know it? This past week, they played pretty well. Parker Meadows went 11 for 28 with 3 doubles and 2 homers, 2 walks and 9 strikeouts. A few more strikeouts than you like to see, but it was an 1147 OPS. That'll work. And Justin Henry Malloy went 8 for 25 with a triple and a home run, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts, and 913 OPS. Not the kind of the crazy numbers we've seen from Malloy, but good enough to help them go 4-2. And then they also got some backup from Andre Lipsius, who went 7 for 21 with 2 doubles for 770 OPS. And then Joe Rizzo, one of the newcomers, has kind of filled in nicely. He was performing pretty poorly in the Marlins system, but he's come here and played well. 7 for 21, a double, home run, 915 OPS last week. So the offense was there. And then they got some pitching from kind of helped to bring in some big leaguers, right? You got somebody as Michael Myers finally getting pitching with Skubal and Manning. It probably helped out. It's true, it did. We got Skubal went 3 innings, 1 hit, 5 strikeouts. Manning 3 innings, 5 hits, and 1 earned run in the rehab stint. You can watch Manning's last start. We put it on our Twitter account if you want to see his whole outing. And 5 hits doesn't sound great, but most of them were kind of bloops or seeing eye singles. He pitched pretty well in that game, so that was nice to see. And Bo Brisky pitched 3 times this week, 3 games, 3.1 innings, 1 hit, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. What they wanted to do, they had him go 1 game, then they wanted him to go and do a sit down, right? So pitch 1 inning, sit for the half inning, then come back and pitch again, and he hit this next outing. And they wanted to pitch him back to back, and they did that fine. So it wouldn't shock me if Bo Brisky is up in Detroit this week. He looks fine. He's throwing 97. Breaking ball is still iffy, but the changeup's there. So, yeah, he looks good. And then we also had a pretty darn good week from Jack O'Loughlin, who, we talked about this when they sent him from high A to triple A. You don't do that with prospects, generally speaking, right? You do that with or guys. But I think O'Loughlin's somewhere in between that, where I think they're still developing him as a prospect, but they also viewed him as a guy that maybe that jump wouldn't necessarily be harmful. He might get beat around a little bit. If he does, it's no big deal. But so far, he's held his own. So yes, it's nice to see, and I expect there will be some promotions from Erie to Toledo here in the next week or so, next couple of weeks of arms. And O'Loughlin will probably go down to Erie and fill in there for the rest of the year. But definitely encouraging to see him do that for, it's kind of just an unexpected promotion. So good stuff there from Toledo. I don't know if anybody has any Toledo specific questions if you want to throw them in here. But yeah, nice to see Toledo finally get back on the winning side of things after, I don't know, 6, 7 consecutive series where they either lost or tied. So we'll move on from Toledo then to Erie. I know I've seen a couple questions, Stan, in there about is their season coming, it's the first half of the Eastern League season ending this week. And yes, it is. This is the final series of the first half. And right now, Erie's in pretty good position. They got a 1.5 game lead over Akron. And I believe it's a 2 game lead over Altoona now. So that's good to see. I'm not trying to see. They went 4-2 against Harrisburg, and they're at Hartford for the next series. That Hartford Yard Goats, the affiliate of the Rockies. So you really just gotta hope that they, go 3-3, got a good chance of winning. You got, you go 4-2, you're probably there. You just gotta go whole court here and hope that the pitching continues. So we got Mitchell right here. I will show this question. Which Erie pitcher gets called up to Toledo first? It wouldn't shock me if we see Sawyer Gibson Long called up first. He's kind of the elder statesman in that group. He's pitched pretty well all year long. And we've heard that Scott Harris likes him. You know, how much he likes him, I don't know. And the interesting thing about Gibson Long is he has just been dominant against right-handed hitters this year. I think the OPS was like 550 all season, but he was getting kind of beat up by left-handed hitters. It was like a 950 OPS. It was like a 400-point difference. And they actually held him out for a start to try to work on a cutter. Now, I've been watching the starts. I haven't seen it really, but the numbers are still there. So if they feel like there's progress there, yeah, it wouldn't shock me if he gets bumped up. The other one, more likely candidate would be would Brent Herter, the lefty, although he had one of his worst outings of the year just the other day, where he gave up, I don't want to say 4 runs in the first inning and had to. He basically hit the pitch limit. They won't let guys throw more than 30 pitches, so he was done after 1 inning. But given his entire body of work in the first half, it wouldn't shock me at all if he gets bumped up. Honestly, a lot of these guys we can see them moving up. Wilmer Flores has been pitching much better of late. His this week he went 6 innings, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. No runs, so that's good to see. And just in general, we talked about his stuff. I talked with Jerry last week. His stuff has been getting better and better. But we have the whole pitching staff down there is pitching pretty well. Keter Montero, 6 innings, 9 strikeouts. He really, when he's on, he looks really good. He's had a couple of rough outings, but other than that, he's been great. Ty Madden wasn't strong again, but he's 5 1/3, 3 earned runs. Nothing to write home about, but he's not also getting blown up. He's just kind of been stagnating, I guess. That's the word I keep using for him this year. He just kind of looks the same as he has for most of the season. But the pitching there remains strong. And the offense was pretty good this week. And they seem to love hitting down in Harrisburg. Maybe they like being in the capital. But yeah, I mean, Diego Rincones is a guy we haven't talked about a ton this year. He was a minor league free agent. Got him from the San Francisco system. So we assumed that Scott Harris was familiar with him and liked him. But this week he went 6 for 23 with 3 home runs. He had 2 all year coming into the season, 6 RBI, 944 OPS. So he was providing both. 2 of those home runs came in one game. He was really giving him some pop lately, and he's a guy that I used to compare him to, like, for lack of a better term, I called him Fat Harold Castro, and he's not fat. I just mean he's bigger. Castro is a smaller guy because he doesn't really take a lot of walks, but he also doesn't strike out a lot. He swings the bat, puts the bat on the ball. And he looks like a guy who could hit 30 plus home runs just in his build, but it doesn't work out that way. I think it swings too much. But great week for him. Good to see. Dylan Dingler had a terrific week. 6 for 14, a home run, 4 RBIs, 4 walks, 5 strikeouts. Damn near 1,200 OPS, which is good to see. He's a guy that he has a lot of ups and downs, but this week he looked good. But the story kind of this week, aside from some of the good pitching, was the 2 guys they brought up from High A West Michigan, Justice Bigby and Chris Myers. We put out a tweet a couple weeks ago about the Tigers leaders in a lot of categories, and those 2 were leading in OPS plus or WRC plus by a pretty wide margin. It's like 30 points higher than Colt Keith. And everybody was like joking, like, "Oh, these guys are in High A. What are they doing in High A?" Well, the Tigers bumped them up, and they both produced this week at a high rate. I'm trying to look at the numbers right here. So Bigby went 9 for 23 with 2 doubles, 2 walks, 940 OPS. Chris Myers was 8 for 17. So those guys combined to go 17 for 40. That'll work. 350 average. I think that's what that is. Myers had a double, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. So really a lot of production from those 2, and they really strengthened the lineup. Nice to see. And then Colt Keith. All anybody ever wants to talk about is Colt Keith, right? And by Colt Keith standards, kind of a down week. And he missed a couple of games. We know he's nursing what appears to be a sore arm. But 4 for 17, a couple of home runs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. He had a little bit of a skid there in between getting a hit today. He had gone 0 for 10. But 0 for 10 is about as bad as you'll see Colt Keith. So I don't think we're too worried about that. And that about wraps it up for that team. Rogelio did highlight on the slide Blake Holub, who we've talked about a little bit. 4 innings pitched, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts, no earned runs. He hasn't given up a run yet in Double-A. Relief arm, it's really moving through the system because the stuff is nasty. So good to see him continuing to produce. I don't know if there were any. Let's see. So Sergio asked if Myers and Bigby are legit prospects we should take seriously. That's a tough one to say, man. I would say that they both have some interesting tools that specifically with their bats. They're both, I would say fringe average to average hitters. Myers is a left-handed hitting first baseman type. And Bigby was a first baseman in college. He's more of a corner outfielder in pro ball. Bigby in particular, I guess they both did. They both show kind of surprising opposite field power. Um, but it's just tough to say. Like I don't see the tools popping out there where like, oh, this guy's a 60 hitter, this guy's got 60 power. They kind of remind me a little bit of Josh Lester, if you will, like just really good minor league hitters who, for whatever reason, might not have the ability to succeed at the higher levels, the highest levels. But all you can do with these guys, and I felt the same way about Kerry Carpenter, to be honest, when he was in Double A trying to think up. I'm like, well, he's probably just one of these guys who's really good at Double A. What you can do is you got to keep playing the guys and see how they perform. And if Bigby and Myers keep hitting like this at Double A, then maybe bump on up Triple A at the end of the year next year. If they keep hitting, who knows? They just, they don't strike me as guys who have those tools that you just have to project to be pluses in the big leagues. They're performers right now, and that's the best I can say about them. I'm not a scout. I kind of fall back into well, there's got to be a reason these guys were taken in the 13th and 19th round, respectively. But that's maybe that's a fallacy there. Maybe I'm appealing to authority that shouldn't be there. So we'll see. But it was happy to see them produce, and maybe they'll continue doing it. So let's see. All right, Colt hit homers in 4 straight games. He did with a couple games off in between, but that was, he's good. Colt's a good hitter. People always ask when he's going up. I don't know. We thought he was going to get a call up soon. We thought he'd get a call up when Erie's, secured a playoff spot. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. It feels a little bit like from the comments we're getting now from Hinch and Harris when they talk is they almost it feels like they want to overcook these players, if you will. Whereas they felt like maybe Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson were a little bit undercooked when they got to the big leagues, and that's going to happen. There's going to be development that happens that has to happen at the big league level. You have to be able to adjust to the best players on the planet. But maybe they felt there was more stuff that could have been accomplished in the minors before they come up. I don't know, but so it seems like that's the way they're going. Maybe they feel like there's no particular rush with a 21-year-old. I don't know. We don't have any inside info on that yet. We wish we did. Maybe Scott Harris loves Colt Keith and wants him to start the year in the big leagues next year so they can get an extra pick when he wins Rookie of the Year. I don't know. But moving on, we're bumping down from Erie. Let's go see what West Michigan did. Now they had I believe, 3-3 week at Lake County. I committed a blunder I thought in the past you couldn't see Lake County games on my LB TV. And so I missed the first couple of games of the week because you can see them now. I thought for sure that it was one of the only places where you couldn't. But so I missed some interesting action there. And also they had a lot of rain/wet grounds rainouts this week. So a lot of games were pushed around. But they ended up having a decent week. And they were kind of led by, who is it? It was I got the slide coming up. Brady Allen, the minor league, the guy they got for Jonathan Davis, who's been playing well for the Marlins. Good for the Marlins. Brady Allen, kind of an OR guy as well. But if you look, Brady Allen's stats this year are almost identical to Jace Young's, like across the board. I think Allen's like a year older, but they're both hitting for power, getting on base at a decent clip. And yeah, he had a heck of a week. He went 8 for 21 to a double, 3 home runs, 9 RBIs, a 13-15 OPS. I didn't check, but maybe player of the week in the Midwest League. Not sure, but those numbers are pretty good. Anytime you get 3 home runs and 9 RBIs, that's pretty close. But the other name that was really nice to see performing well this week was Isaac Pacheco. It's been a struggle for him for 5-6 weeks now, but he went 6 for 18, 3 doubles, 2 home runs, 2 walks, and 4 strikeouts, a 12.33 OPS. That's kind of what we were hoping to see out of him. And I think it helps that Lake County is kind of a smaller park, but he was spraying the ball all over the place and looking good. So that was nice to see. Danny Soretti continues to be just kind of steady Soretti, I suppose we call him, if you want to. 4 for 15, a home run, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts, 8.56 OPS. Roberto Campos had a strong week in some regards. He went 8 for 24, which is great, like 333, right? Only 2 doubles, 7 RBI, no walks, and 7 strikeouts. That's kind of unusual for him, a 737 OPS. He controls the strike zone a little bit better than you would expect. So, I don't know. You give a little, you get a little there with hitting 333, but not getting on base otherwise. And then there were just a couple other players down there worth mentioning. Troy Melton got his first professional win the other day. 5 innings, 3 hits, no runs, a walk, 7 strikeouts. He continues his ascent. I think you could argue for him maybe as a top 20 prospect in the system now. Just he still needs to continue to refine breaking balls, but he's learning how to pitch in professional baseball, and that's fun to see. Let's see. Carlos Pena had a strange game today. 6 innings, only 1 hit, but gave up 2 earned runs. Two hit batters, 4 walks, and 6 strikeouts. His control issues have been kind of befuddling this year, but because he's a touch and feel guy, but I think it's basically he ran into some issues where he was getting hit hard. When that happens, some guys get a little shy of throwing in the strike zone, and you can see Brian Pena, who will typically he doesn't get in a lot of guys' faces, but you'll see him challenge Carlos Pena. Maybe it's because they share the same last name. I don't know, but he challenges him sometimes, and I don't know if it works out well, but it was a bit of a rough week for at least with control wise for Pena. The other name I wanted to highlight was Tyler Madison, who had gone on the injured list and just came back, but he got an interesting situation the other night where he gave up. It was a tight game, I think 4-3 at the time, and he gave up 2 singles to start the the inning, and then just turned it into overdrive. It was just firing the ball past. He got up to 98, 3 straight strikeouts. He got out of a jam that he kind of created on his own, and that was really impressive to see because that's going to be his role going forward. Is kind of a flamethrower out of the bullpen, and you like to see guys succeed in their role. We got a question here. Does West Michigan still get huge crowds? They do. It depends on what you mean by huge, but I want to say that they are second in attendance in the Midwest League behind Dayton. I think Dayton usually has pretty big crowds, but yeah, they tend to get. On the weekend, you might get 3,000-4,000, if not more. I think we've been there for some pretty large crowds. Jackson Job's debut last year was a particularly big, raucous crowd. It's a great atmosphere for a baseball game, and it's only going to get better as their renovations continue. So here's a good question. Mitchell Stachnik, does Jung replace? Well, I said that name. Does Jace Young replace Colt Keith and Erie whenever he gets called up? Possibly. I want to talk about Jace Young again. I didn't mention him here, but people probably want to know what happened. Let's see, what is his stats? I think he went three for 23 this week. 2 home runs, but only 1 other hit. 3 walks, 8 strikeouts, 622 OPS. Just it feels like whenever he appears to be turning a corner, he kind of has a week like this. And I've been kind of harsh with Jace Young because of the looks. Just whenever we see him, he doesn't seem to be performing terribly well. And there's just some aspects of him swinging and missing at pitches in the zone that worries me for the future. And you can look at his numbers, and it's like a 140 OPS or WRC plus. Like he's really performing well, and a lot of that is driven by the walks and the power, which is great. You'd love to see that, but I always get a little bit worried when college hitters aren't also hitting for a high average. Now, we've all learned that the batting average doesn't mean much on its own, but it's kind of a mirage at the big league level. But there's also kind of a mirage you get in the minor leagues where you get these WRC pluses that look great, and it's because guys are walking and hitting for power. We saw it with Christian Santana last year with 215, but had like a 120 WRC plus because he walked a ton and hit for some power. And you can go to Fangraphs and you could filter down and you would search for 22-year-olds like Jace Young with 200 plus plate appearances and a strikeout rate north of 25%. And there's a lot of them, and there are only about 5 big leaguers on there. And that worries me a little bit. I just would love to see his strikeouts come down a little bit and his contact rate go up in the zone more, hit for some more average. Maybe there's the stuff behind the scenes that I'm missing where he's going to get better at that, but it still worries me. So I don't know. At a certain point, I do think he's going to get promoted to Erie just because, but I don't know. And I've talked about this before, but he gives me kind of Kristen Stewart vibes where it's the power is great. The walks are great. I just worry about there's contact being there. So I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully he'll pull out of this and make me look foolish next week and in the coming weeks and really start knocking the cover off the ball. But I'm a little bit worried. So let's We'll move on down to Lakeland. The Flying Tigers, they went 3-3 this week. Next week they're at Bradenton. It's tough sledding down there. Not a ton of prospects to speak of. They did have a great week from their combined catchers, Sergio Tapia and Moises Valero. They went 7 for 14 with 3 doubles, 5 RBIs. We saw some performance from Luke Gold. He's played better of recent. I think he was their 5th-round pick last year, I want to say. 5 for 13, a double, 3 walks, 962 OPS. Dom Johnson, the speedy guy, outfielder, 4 for 13, 3 walks, 2 steals, 3 strikeouts. The young infielders, though, Abel Bastidas, only 4 for 21, did have a pair of doubles, no walks, 6 strikeouts. That's a little bit worrisome. Santana, who I was just talking about, 3 for 14. He's gotten his average up to like 118 on the season, but it's still, awfully low. 3 walks and 5 strikeouts. Peyton Graham went 5 for 19 with 3 walks and 5 strikeouts and a steal. And then we got some interesting pitchers. Connor Holden, I think fresh off his Florida State League Pitcher of the Week, had another solid outing. 5 innings, 3 hits, only 1 earned run, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. That's good to see. Continues pitching well. Carlos Marcano is an interesting name that Rogelio and I have talked about a little bit, because he was one of the youngest pitchers in the Florida State League last year. And age is always kind of an interesting thing. When you see an organization challenge a really young guy, you think they must think highly of him. And he worked mostly out of the bullpen last year, but he's moved into the rotation, and he had a really great start last week. And this week, 5 innings, 2 hits, 1 earned run, 4 strikeouts. He's an interesting arm. He's kind of limited by his own physical build. He's only about 6'1", 180 pounds, but he's gotten a little bit more athletic, thrown a little bit harder, and he's got a pretty good changeup and a decent breaking ball. So just a name to remember as maybe some guy who will sneak into prospect lists down the road, just because he's performing now. All right, here. Well, let's have some fun. We got some questions here. Andrew Miller says Santana isn't a prospect, in my opinion. You're free to have that opinion. He's still only 19 years old. He's a guy who walks a lot. He's got some thump in the bat. He's not a shortstop, so that's going to take him down a run. And he's an okay second baseman. So yeah, you just got to hope that because he's so young, that he's eventually going to develop. But it's tough to get super excited about a guy who's a career 200 hitter in low A ball, right? And now Sean Michael says, did I miss Chris's apology to Spencer Torkelson? I have not apologized to Spencer Torkelson. I will not apologize to Spencer Torkelson, because Torkelson has been far worse than I ever projected him to be. I compared him to Rhys Hoskins. I thought he would be a Rhys Hoskins player. Rhys Hoskins is like a 125 to 130 WRC plus. Spencer Torkelson has been very good lately. He looks good. I'm hoping he keeps it up. It's been great. His WRC plus is still 99 to 100 on the year. In a career, it's like 80. If he keeps this up, it's going to keep climbing, and I will be happy to apologize. I want to see it more, but I'm just happy to see him performing, because it was looking scary there for a little bit, right? Like, like the name Torkelson's going to haunt the franchise for a while, but he seems to be picking things up. And we didn't even talk about it. The Tigers had a pretty awesome series win this weekend at Minnesota. So hard to be upset about that. And they really, the offense in June went into that, hibernation, but didn't seem to have any trouble against Minnesota. And they did it against some good pitchers too, right? Joe Ryan, Sonny Gray. So got to feel pretty good about that to see. And Tork's been driving it. Miggy's been hitting well. Baez is playing well. Ibanez is back to hitting. It's nice to see. So definitely progress, as Sean Michael says there. But yeah, I think I finished up. The only other name I wanted to mention for Flying Tigers in Lakeland was Colin Fields, who I think has come up from the Complex League. 2 games, 3 1/3 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. Just finding some guys who put up some numbers this week. It could be a little bit tough in the Florida State League. And we'll finish off here with the rookie leagues. And there's some things to talk about here. I guess the first thing we want to talk about, of course, is Jackson Jobe returning to action in the Florida Complex League. 2 perfect innings, 4 strikeouts. Really encouraging. Now, there are a couple things about that are encouraging to me. Number one, that they gave him 2 innings, which suggests that he might go 3 in his next outing, and then 4, and then 5. And you know what? If he's doing that, he's probably going to be back starting games within the next month, which is honestly a little bit quicker than I expected. With backs, I always get worried. So just good to see. And then it's awesome to see that he went out there and dominated, right? Like it's good to get him back on the mound no matter what. But it sure would be nice if he, became that arm that everybody was dreaming of. And there were, we talked about this before, but before he went down with injury, or right after he went down with injury, AJ Hinch said, it's a real bummer because he had been doing everything we hoped he would do and expected of him to do, which made me think, it's not saying a ton, but it made me think like, yeah, he had taken a step up. They were excited about his potential this year. And we saw it at the end of last year. He was a better pitcher at the end of last year than he was at the beginning of the year because it's a guy who hasn't pitched a ton, just the way it is. And it's kind of wild to think that, AJ Smith Shawver, who's pitching for the Braves right now, was taken in the same draft as Jackson Jobe, is actually 3 months younger than Jackson Jobe. He's already in the big leagues. Now, that was super quick ascent from a guy kind of like Jackson Jobe who hadn't pitched a ton. With Shawver, it was a guy who he was a quarterback and just gave up. He was basically going to give up pitching to play football, but then football got shut down during COVID, and so he just kind of went back to throwing. And they saw him like, hey, that's good. So, any event, great to see Joe back. Looking forward to seeing what he does in his next couple outings. Somebody asked earlier if there's video that at some point their the player development account would have some video. We've seen video from the SEL from them before. Roberto Campos hit a home run in his first career FCL at bat, and they put that out. But maybe not. I don't know. But that's good to see. There are some performances down there in Florida too that I think are worth noticing. And the one guy I want to mention is the catcher Josue Briseño, who he went 7 for 18 last week with 2 doubles, a home run, 8 RBIs, at 10, 12 OPS so far in the Florida Complex League. Now, numbers in the rookie leagues don't mean a whole lot, but you look at Briseño, and he was one of their bigger signings last year. He's an 18-year-old, and he's a big kid. He's 6'4", probably 200-pound now catcher. And the way he's performing so far, you have to be kind of encouraged by that. So he's just a name I think people might want to remember. Because we were looking at Dominican Summer League stats last year, and it was Raylan Perez was really tearing everything up. He's off to a rough start this year in the Florida Complex League, but Briseño was playing well last year too. It just wasn't as loud as Perez, but so far it's been awfully loud for him in the Complex League, so that's exciting. You have Andrew Jenkins kind of rehabbing down there, 9 for 14. That's a bit much. That's a college guy playing against a bunch of teenagers. He probably needs to go back to Lakeland. Denweris De La Cruz was a guy who I think he won the OPS title, if such a thing exists, in the Florida Complex League a couple of years back. We've seen him in spring training a couple of times. He's just kind of been staying at that level. Catcher. He went 6 for 10 with 3 doubles and a homer. Samuel Gill, or Hill, again, I don't know how it's pronounced. Another guy from the signing class of last year, 6 for 16 with a triple, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. He's a guy that, by the sounds of it, even when they were signing him, he sounds more like a Sergio Alcantara type, right? Like a more of a glove first infielder with some feel to hit. Probably not a ton of power, but there's some value in guys like that if you can, they play really good defense. And then we'll go head down to the DSL. We got Angel Cruz, 7 for 14 with a couple home runs. He's an older first baseman, probably not much to think of there. And then some younger guys who are interesting. Santiago Pinto went 5 for 12. He's only 17. He had a home run, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, and a steal. An outfielder. Again, the Dominican Summer League stats don't tell us anything really, but all things being equal, we like good stats more than bad stats. Frank Yerber Montilla, one of my favorite names in the system. He's a really athletic, dynamic type of player. He's his second year in the DSL. Went 5 for 21 with a double, a triple, a homer, 3 walks, and a steal. You can just kind of get the picture for a guy who's hitting for the cycle during the week. It's probably a little bit fun to watch. And then you got Anibal Salas, who is a 17-year-old, 4 for 17, a double. What's interesting about him, seems to be showing a good eye. 6 walks, 7 strikeouts, 2 steals. So just these are young guys, the names that don't mean a whole lot right now, but who knows, a couple of years down the road, maybe they're among the Tigers' top 30 prospects. And a couple pitchers, Josper Sanchez had 9 strikeouts in 3 2/3 innings last week. And then Duque Hebert, everybody is still liking him from the World Baseball Classic. 5 innings, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. Pretty strong week for him. He's pitching well so far in the Dominican League. So that's like 40 minutes of stats talk. hopefully you guys didn't hate it without the visuals. Kind of more of a traditional podcast here, I suppose, than a visual podcast. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of typical week in the minor league system. You got some impressive performances. You got from guys you want. Some other guys having rough weeks. We'll reevaluate down the road. But I don't know if anybody else has any questions in the chat. Now seems like a good time to get to them. Otherwise, we'll probably get out of here. I don't know if, like I said, anybody. I'll give you guys a minute or two if there's something you think of that you want to mention. If not, hopefully, we'll certainly see you guys on Thursday. Although I didn't miss last Thursday's show with the Motor City Metrics. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. It's been a while since I've never actually done a solo video show. I used to do solo podcast occasionally when I was doing the locked on thing, but it can be a little bit tough. Hope I'm not talking too fast and so forth like that. But yeah, if nobody has any questions, we'll see you either tomorrow night or Thursday for the Motor City Metrics. And like I said, good Tigers series win. Pulling for Erie this week to clinch that playoff spot, and then maybe cross your fingers you get Colt Keith moving up, just so people can relax a little bit and feel the progress, even though I'm sure it's going just fine. But yeah, we'll see. So anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. Thanks again to Brian Sakowski from Perfect Game. He's awesome. Thanks to Raj. Thanks to all the guys out there who had a good Father's Day, and anybody who's tuning in. And we will see you next week. Bye bye, everybody.